You only got one right. Yeah, it's very hard. This is the whole point. I wanted you to see how difficult it is to decide if it's a bot or not. It's really challenging. That was literally the point of this. So 3 of you responded. So I'll get going, and you could keep working on this. And as I go through the presentation, so this is bot or not. So we're going to decode dishonesty, and we're also going to talk about ethics. So originally, when I've given this presentation before, it was decoding dishonesty and promoting academic integrity. And my target audience was like school leaders or educators. And this is my first time presenting this to computer science teachers. So I can get a little bit technical with you guys, and we can go deep into the technical stuff, which is really fun for me. So I went back and I modified and edited it a bit more for your audience. This is my first time giving this version of the presentation, which I'm really excited about. So just a little bit about me. So AI is kind of my thing right now. If you're not familiar with me, I am the Hudson Valley director of NiceGate. So many of you might know me from that. If you haven't heard about NiceGate, I highly encourage you to check it out. I know that we're a partner with this conference, Yes for New York. We do have our big annual conference coming up in November. If you haven't heard of it, please go to nicegate.org and click on annual conference and check it out, because it's one of the best conferences locally for us in New York State, I think, in the field of educational technology. And that's why I got so involved. I'm not saying it because I am on the board. I became very interested in it because of how strongly I believed in the organization. So I highly encourage you to check that out. So my day job is I'm the educational technology director and the data protection officer of Pecanico Hills School District, which is in Sleepy Hollow, New York. I'm sure you've heard about that around Halloween time in Westchester. I live in New York City. So for all of my New York City people in here, I'm one of you. I live there, and then I drive to work every day in Westchester. And if you are interested in AI, that's kind of my thing. I have a book and podcast called The Generative Age, and it's about artificial intelligence and the future of education. My book came out last month, so it's really, we have bills, sorry. It's really new for me to talk about that and weird. The podcast, I've been having so much fun with that. I'll go through some of my guests, but I'll show you that at the end. But if you are interested in AI and you want to keep up with what's going on in thought leaders, just definitely check out the Generative Age podcast. And I bring in a lot of thought leaders. So the pop quiz. So let me see how many of you respond. 11 responses. Okay, great. I'm looking at the summary. So there's a lot of people got it right, that didn't get it right. The whole point, I mean, you saw the answers if you did or didn't. The whole point of me doing that for you is that it is really hard to decide if it's AI generated and if it's not. And we're going to go through some of these things, but I just wanted to show you how challenging it is, especially in the beginning of the new school year, if you don't know your students, to figure out if it was AI generated or it wasn't. So we can talk a little bit just what is AI, and I'll go a little bit technical with you guys more than I do in a normal session. But the way I describe it to normal people is the world's smartest librarian, the librarian that's read every single book in the entire library. And then you can say, tell me about computer science. And then they take, maybe it's a bit complicated, rewrite this for a kindergartner. And then it will rewrite it for the kindergartner. Or you can be like, oh, rewrite this, but make it for my Board of Education and make a scope and sequence of the units and curriculum over the course of the year for third graders. And it could rewrite it in seconds. So I describe it like that for someone who doesn't really understand it. But for all of you who are computer science people, we could talk about it a bit more technically. And understanding how it works is by predicting the next most probable word. So the probability of the words strung together. So I'm going to say a sentence, and in the chat, I want you to type what you think the last word is. Once upon a, what do you think? See in the chat. Time. Yeah. What about the cat in the, what do you think? Type it in the chat. Hat, right? So that would be the next most probable word. So when we talk about AI detection, it's going to be very important for us to understand that it's a probability of the words that are strung together. And AI, or as my students that I just viewed in my session yesterday, they call it the AI. It's like it's a person, the AI, the AI. analyze large data sets, so like all the internet. So we're going to talk a bit about that. So if you're using something like ChatGPT or Bing or Bard, it's really the wild, wild west of the internet, and it's the good, the bad, the ugly. Some of it, just because someone writes something, we always say this media literacy. Just because they write it doesn't mean it's true, right? So there's a lot of information that's not true out there. And when the AI is giving you results, it's taking some information that might not be true. So what makes this different than a search engine? When you go to Google or Bing and you type something in, you get a lot of search results. You can say, oh, this came from a reliable resource. This might not have. And you can read through and determine. When the AI, it's just funny to call it that, finds resources for you're not necessarily sure exactly where it came from. Tools like Bing are putting in links for you to redirect to find it. But I always say it's a great place to start. It's kind of like what I refer to as Wikipedia back in the day. It might not be a reliable resource, but if I don't know anything, it's a better place for me to start and know what I'm looking for and then go back and find information about that. I promise you I'm going to tie all this into computer science teachers at the end, but I just think we need to build up to that point. So initially, when I told you my target audience for this presentation was school leaders and educators, we talk a lot about academic honesty or dishonesty and plagiarism. So I try to, I like to be positive. If you've ever heard ISTE CEO Richard Collada speak, he really tries to stress to reframe to the positive. So when I rewrote my policies, I didn't actually add in any words of AI. We can talk about that another time. I actually just started a newsletter, and my first one was on policy. So that's on my website. I'll give you guys all that information later. But dishonesty. So I just want to look at definitions. So what is plagiarism? Plagiarism is a practice of taking someone else's work and ideas and passing them off as your own. AI is not a someone, it's a something. And I think that academic dishonesty, if you look at the definition, is dishonest or unethical actions taken by a student to gain an unfair disadvantage. I think we can all agree that that's a better definition of someone who might have taken an assignment, ran it through AI, and handed it in. That's dishonest. They're not handing in work that's their own. We're going to talk about all the shades of gray that come with that, but I don't know if I would necessarily call it plagiarism. I think it falls more under academic dishonesty. That's why when I wrote my policies, I focused on academic integrity. And hopefully by the end, we can all come to agreement on what is academic integrity. But that's how when I rewrote my policies, I did not have the word AI at all. And I do not have an AI policy because I don't have an internet policy. But I have a acceptable use policy, and I reframed it all to the positive because there's a laundry list of things you shouldn't do, but it's called acceptable use. What is acceptable use? So making that positive, and you could do that in your class policies too. So if you're a teacher and you have a class policy, maybe sometimes you're allowed to use AI, maybe sometimes they're not. It's dependent on the assignment, and you as a teacher should tell your students when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate, and making sure that they're handing in work that reflects their own. So we're going to go through a bit of that. So I took Matt Miller's famous, what I like to call shades of gray. He doesn't call it that. He's going to be a guest on my podcast, I think in January. Really excited about that. So rethinking plagiarism and cheating. So we're going to start at the bottom one, which is completely human generated. The student wrote all the assignment content without consulting the AI. And then all the way at the top where it's AI generated, student plugged the prompt into AI, copied it and pasted it and submitted to the teacher. I think we could all agree that that's not academic integrity. They didn't even read it, right? So I'm going to make an assumption here that we can all agree on that. And there's a whole scale. So I'm going to ask you in a second to draw the line, what I like to call drawing the line. So you'll go through this and you'll tell me where you would draw the line. I should have numbered these. I guess I could do that for next time. This is helpful. But the bottom one would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So those are the numbers. So I'm going to ask you to draw the line. I'm going to give you a second to read them, and you're going to draw the line in a minute. But before, you know what? Let's do that now. So we're going to draw the line. So read through these and tell me which one you consider cheating. And it starts at the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Write a number in the chat of what you think is cheating. Which of those and up is cheating? getting a lot of 4s and 5s. So if we look at, it depends on the goal of the assignment, but 3 or 4. Okay, so some more people are in the middle around 3. Okay. So yeah, it's funny. I was having a conversation with my cousin who's now in 9th grade. And she, on her own, I'll show you something she showed me, but she thinks it depends on the assignment. If she is in English class and she's writing an essay, maybe it's not as appropriate. And these are her words, these are not my words. But she said, in social studies, it doesn't matter. That's what she said. She said, in social studies, it doesn't matter. And they're not grading my writing. I mean, they probably are looking at her grammar of writing, but in her mind, she thinks that she's allowed to do it in social studies because that's not what the goal of the assignment was her writing. I mean, she always thinks it needs to start with her ideas and reflect her ideas, so I don't want to discredit her for that. But it's really interesting having these conversations with children, with students, and we're going to talk about that at the end. And I encourage you, all the things that I'm talking about with you as educators, you could be talking about these with your students in your class and what they think is ethical and what's not ethical, because that you need to make your class rules with your students because if you want them to buy in. And if you're a school leader, you should be having these conversations with your teachers as well. So we kind of drew the line. A lot of us was around 4. Maybe it was 3, maybe it was 5, but around 4. So I think that Matt Miller poses some pretty interesting questions. Which of these would you consider cheating? We just did that. And then the next step is, which of these are relevant to the student's future? Like, depending on the assignment, it might not be relevant. Like my cousin said, if it's social studies class versus English class. And most importantly, which one would you do in your own work as an adult? Because if you would do it, we really need to be preparing students for their future to be successful in their future. So we need to provide them with the skills to be successful. If they're not learning how to use AI well and for the right reasons, they're going to be at a disadvantage when they graduate and become working people in the real world. So we really need to make sure that we're preparing them for the future. And I'll show you my passport to success. So I did take Matt Miller's graph in my book. And then after that, I have some questions, which I'll pose to you at the way end if we have time. And I had you look through the scenarios that I posed and answer several questions based on that I took like from a spin from this. So if we have time at the end, we'll do that. But I think when you who did I see recently? I think it was AJ Giuliani said, if you take this and you replace the word AI with tutor, your answers are really going to change, right? So if we said that cheating was around 3, 4, 5, if you said that the student created multiple responses with a tutor, use the best parts, edited and submitted, which is number 4, would that be cheating anymore? What do you guys think? So I'd pick number 4. If it was with a tutor, would that change your mind? It would not change your mind. Would that change anyone's mind if you replaced the word AI with tutor? Is anyone's mind changed? Let's see. Maybe. Yeah. Nope. Seems like less cheating. So we have to start. I'm not giving you answers to these things, but start to critically think about this. If you think it's cheating with an AI, but you don't think it's cheating with a tutor, we maybe have to rethink. And I'm not saying I know the answers. What is considered a tutor? If you haven't watched Sal Khan's TED Talk, I highly recommend watching the first few minutes of it. It's phenomenal. Then he goes into talking about his new product called Conmigo. I'm not trying to sell anyone on Conmigo, but I think that the first few minutes, I actually went back and rewrote this into my book. My publisher probably wanted to kill me, but I added in this TED Talk because I thought it did a really great job of describing how AI will be the teacher's best teaching assistant and the student's best tutor. And if you use the right AI, and I'm not saying it's ChatGPT or Bard or Bing, the new Bing, but there might be more of an AI tutor that's helping guide the student to the correct answer without giving them the answer, like maybe ChatGPT does right now. So when we really start to rethink what defines a tutor, we might rethink how we draw the line on this shades of gray scale. And I'm not saying you will or you won't, but it's just something to start thinking about maybe. So cheating or thought partner? Is AI cheating or is it a thought partner? And this is where my 9-year-old cousin told me about this AI she's been using since 6th grade. So she's in 9th grade now. She's been using it for 3 years. And before she even knew what AI was or ChatGPT was, it's called Quillbot. And she takes all of her writing and she puts it through here. This is not her writing. It was just a generic one. And it tells her, it gives her maybe a different way of writing the same thing. And she said it actually really helps her become a better writer because she's like, she reads her thoughts and it helps her maybe rewrite her thoughts in a more coherent, logical way. And when she reads it, she's like, oh, okay, I wouldn't have thought about that. And she said it actually helps her improve her writing over time. So I think that if they're putting the assignment in the AI and it just giving them work, and that might be cheating. But if they're using it as a thought partner, maybe expanding upon their ideas or refining them or helping them rewrite better will actually make them a better student or their work a little bit better. But want to talk to you a bit about detection because we're really here for the computer science background. Like I said, I could go on and on if you were my target audience of educators and leaders, but I definitely want to get to the fun computer science stuff I never really get to talk to with other groups of people. So there is manual evaluation where you can open the revision history, you can see the work as the student is developing it. There's even tools that show you the student typing it. It makes like a video for you and you can watch how they went back and added in more writing. And I think that all of these tools will be built right into like Google Docs, Microsoft Word, Classroom, Teams, all the LMSs. It'll be built right in, and I don't think we'll have to do as much of it as we have to do right now. But I think that monitoring your students' work as they're developing it is really important. And we're going to talk about that, like the end product, which is the final product versus the whole learning process. And if you're involved with your students throughout the duration of the learning process, you're not going to be as concerned as the gotcha with the detection of the end product. But there are tools to detect AI. So like we talked about in the beginning with predicting the next most probable word, there are detection tools that predict that come up with the likelihood that AI was used based on the probability of the words strung together. So that's how those AI detection tools work. However, my computer science teachers I'm really excited to talk to you about this. AI can outsmart AI. So there's another AI tool called GPT-0. So, well, also let's just talk about this. OpenAI had a detection tool. They took it down because it actually wasn't accurate. And if you take one AI generated output, plug in another AI and another AI, and it starts tweaking them, the likelihood of the percentage of the AI used is going to probably decrease. But there's this one AI tool called GPT-0. And if you take I actually did this. I took ChatGPT, I put an assignment, it outputted something, I ran it through detection, said probability of AI used 100%. Then I ran it through GPT-0. And GPT-0 replaces words with synonyms. So like we said, once upon a time, the cat in the hat. If you replace synonyms with words, the likelihood is a lot less. So if it was like the cat in the top hat, the cat in the baseball hat, or something like that, the probability is not very likely because it's a synonym to the word, not the word itself. So that's interesting. And if you are a computer science teacher, you get to teach these things with your students. You could talk about AI and you could talk about detection. You could talk about all of these things with your own students. So I think it's really important when we're detecting AI or working with our students to detect AI to just set expectations, what is acceptable for this particular assignment or in this class, because it will depend on assignment to assignment, right? So in this assignment, here's how you're allowed to use it. Using a multi-pronged approach, so not just focusing on the end product, making sure you're checking in along the learning process, and fostering that culture of academic integrity and including them in these conversations. And we're going to go a bit more. I just want to make sure I have time for you. Oh, I love this one. So what is the concept of originality? So when we talk about students handing in their own work, yes, it should be their own work, but think about the originality conundrum. So we weren't born and raised in a bubble, right? Like you didn't grow up in this black, dark bubble. You go outside and you see trees and grass on pouring rain. If you are an art teacher, like I know Tim teaches art, and you ask them to draw a landscape, they didn't grow up in a cave, right? So they draw inspiration from the world around them, like that landscape behind me. And same with AI. So they're like curators, picking and choosing things that resonate with them and making something that starts. It should always start with the user, like my cousin even said. It starts with your ideas and it helps you expand upon them, but it should always end with your own like knowledge and skill set and beliefs. But this thought of originality, I think, is a really fun one. If you pose that to your own students, like what is the concept of an original thought anyway? Because we do draw from things around us. And in the book, I called it a curator. But when I was in Greece this summer, I had met this DJ, and I think it's a lot more fun if you're going to talk to your students about it. It's like a DJ, right? Like they're picking and choosing bits of music that they like and putting together this curation of songs. And I think that they might resonate with DJ more than curator. So if you're doing this with your students, that might be a fun little twist. So drawing a line, what I think we could all agree on is if the assignment or the course prohibits AI, then that's cheating. If the student presents the AI work as their own without giving it proper citation, that's probably cheating. If the student uses generative AI to complete the assignments that violates your rules, that's probably cheating. So those are the places that I drew the line for us. So I think that this is where I really want to focus with you guys on, because I think this is something you can do with your own students. So questioning the AI output. So if you are using AI or you're analyzing AI or teaching about AI in your computer science course, teaching the students to question the output. So I have this really great clip of a video that I'm going to play for you. And I think that the most important thing is, like, with media literacy, we taught students to question their resource, the reliable resource. So what makes a reliable resource? Where does it come from? And questioning that output for media literacy. But now we need to really question the output for AI use. So I'm going to show you this video and then we're going to go a bit into it. I love this, so I'm really excited to share this with you.
From an old-time classic, The Art of War, which tells us, in my interpretation, know your enemy, choose your battles, and innovate your weapons. Let's start with the first, know your enemy, which means we need to evaluate AI with scrutiny. AI is passing the bar exam. Does that mean that AI is robust at common sense? You might assume so, but you never know. So suppose I left 5 clothes to dry out in the sun, and it took them 5 hours to dry completely. How long would it take to dry 30 clothes? GPT-4, the newest, greatest AI system, says 30 hours. Not good. A different one. I have 12-liter jug and 6-liter jug, and I want to measure 6 liters. How do I do it? Just use the 6-liter jug, right? GPT-4 spits out some very elaborate nonsense. Step 1, fill the 6-liter jug. Step 2, pour the water from 6 to 12-liter jug. Step 3, fill the 6-liter jug again. Step 4, very carefully pour the water from 6 to 12-liter jug. And finally, you have 6 liters of water in the 6-liter jug that should be empty by now. Okay, one more. Would I get a flat tire by bicycling over a bridge that is suspended over nails, screws, and broken glass? Yes, highly likely, GPT-4 says. Presumably because it cannot correctly reason that if a bridge is suspended over the broken nails and broken glass, then the surface of the bridge doesn't touch these sharp objects directly. Okay, so how would you feel about an AI lawyer that aced the bar exam, yet randomly fails at such basic common sense? AI today is unbelievably intelligent and then shockingly stupid.
So I really love that video because
from an old time.
Sorry, it's not going next. I love that video because it really shows you or your students. I actually took screenshots of that. I included that in my book too. I went back and edited it. I really loved it so much. And I put her prompts, and then I tried the same thing. So I tried her exact prompts that she shares in that video, and I saw the answers it gave me, and they were different than the answers that it gave her. And then I asked in the same chatbot the same question, but just changed the numbers. And even within my same chat, it gave me different responses. So I thought that was very interesting, that how my answers from the chatbot compared to the answers she got, and then also my answers within the same chat with the same question but just different numbers. It was actually really fascinating. I encourage you to all go and try that. But I think that's really important for students to see and then analyze the output. Like, so you as computer science teachers get to do this with your students. And if you're not a computer science teacher and you're an English teacher, I do this with our English class too. We give them AI generated output and we have them analyze it. And it is fascinating. And I'll share something at the end of something that New York City schools are doing too. So something that we as educators should think about, but I think also as a computer science teacher that might be teaching about AI should think about these things too. I literally just copied and pasted these from my book, so I didn't even edit them. It's there for you. I wanted you to have all the information about this from the book, so it's literally copied and pasted from the book for you. So these are the ethical considerations, the big ones. So just accessibility and the digital divide. A lot of us in New York, we have a big equity gap. So just if they don't have access to this, then just it's increasing the existing balances, and I just want to point that out. But algorithmic discrimination, and the example that I'm going to use at the end really does give this example. So I'm not going to go too deep into this one right now, but I do think that this is really, really important. So the data that it's trained on is, like I said, good, bad, ugly. It might not be accurate, or it might be accurate, but it might be biased in the output. So maybe there is not all demographics, maybe it's biased information trained on. The example I give is in the medical field. If doctors are mostly males and nurses are mostly females, it's going to assume that that's the case, right? So it could be race, gender, any kind of discrimination, and it could really actually lead to unfair learning opportunities, or information. So as AI is embedded into all of the tools we use and love, it might maybe give you as an educator, it might recommend early intervention based on a child's gender or race, or maybe the students using it, or a user. It doesn't have to be a student, because we are talking about computer science students who are going to maybe study this later in life. It might provide like an unhelpful hint or resource based on biased information. But then I always flip it the other way. Like myself, I'm not like I'm love like including diversity, equity, inclusion. I think that's really important. In my own school district, we only have a 40% white population. So the majority is our minority here. And I think it's really important for me to include that in my own instruction. I'm sure hopefully everyone does. But sometimes people, are racist or anti-Semitic, and we hope that that's not the case, but it might be. So sometimes I like to look at the flip side. Maybe AI is less biased than some of those humans. So in some cases, AI might be biased, but in some cases, it might actually be less biased than the human that is using it. So just making sure that if we are analyzing the output, and we are making sure that the output is not biased, I think that that's really the most important thing. And ethics. So I think going back to that question that I just raised before, like, when is it unethical to pass important issues to AI? Like, when should you as a human do it? And when is it more responsible to pass an important issue to AI based on a human bias? And both of these are equally problematic. So I think like maybe just take a minute in the chat. Like, I think that like the ethical considerations are if we could take ideas out of this from everyone, like, when is it more, when it, like, what scenario do you think you as a human should never give to AI? And which ones do you think might be better to give to AI? And balancing that the human AI balance, I think I called it I don't know what I call it in the book, but I think that that is incredibly important. And I think that the ethics behind when to use it and when not to use it is really important. So if you have an idea, put it in the chat. Like, when do you think it's more ethical and when do you think it's unethical to use AI? If you have any ideas, just please put them in the chat so we can get ideas from all of you as well. And I think that pose this to your students. I mean, ask them this question. You'll be really surprised at the results that they give you. I've done it here with my own students. I should have put a screenshot. I'll make sure I go back and do that of their thoughts of what they think when it's more ethical and when it's unethical to use AI. And I think, there it is. So incomplete data. So maybe not all the data is there. So I have been talking to a lot of people in the field. Most recently, I talked to an AI researcher for Microsoft. He's working on building a GPT for weather and predicting better weather predictions with AI. And it's real. So he's building this GPT, and he has a lot of historical data, so he can take the 10 years ago weather data, plug it in, and figure out if what happened 9 years ago was accurate, right? Because we have historical data, but sometimes that data is incomplete, right? So if you don't have complete data, then you might not be getting the results that you are looking for. And there's a big lack of contextual judgment. So we as humans analyze the world around us, and we have a lot of contextual judgments. AI does not. So like, if the student fell on the playground, if the teacher, maybe their mother or father just passed away, you're just having a bad day. AI is not good at that. So I think that taking these things into consideration. And now for computer science teachers, love that we get to talk about this. Recursive self-improvement. So AI is teaching AI. There's a lot of ethics behind this. So there's a lot of concerns because humans are not really sure necessarily how the AI is being trained right now, because it's AI being trained by AI. And there's this black box. It's often referred to this black box because we don't fully understand how AI might evolve in the future. And there was a big push to have a halt with AI development because of this recursive self-improvement. So again, pose this to your students. This is a great question to pose to your students. And then I'll keep going. When you as an educator, because we are teachers right now, when you as an educator are giving them assignment, just ask yourself, if a bot could be used to easily complete the activity or assignment, you really need to reassess how you are assessing the learning, right? The process, you need to focus on the process over the end product, not just that end product anymore. So make sure, if your students are using it, which I hope that you encourage them to use it as computer science teachers, and make sure, it's at Law 2D. We are in New York. We do need to make sure that we follow at Law 2D student data privacy and security laws. Canva actually just got put on the opt-in list. So reach out to your school district, your technology department, and ask them to make sure that they signed the opt-in agreement, which will give you access to Canva for free and compliant version. And Canva has the, I think there's something in the bottom corner. I get all the words mixed up of what each tool calls it, but you can use Canva to write, and they have a text to image generator. It might not be as good as like Midjourney or something like that, but at least they have one. And if you go back and watch a session that I did yesterday with my third grade teacher, Marina Lombardo, about debugging creativity, we did a really great lesson with our third graders about creative writing and algorithmic writing and using their writing to create AI generated images and prompts and stuff like that. So if you missed that session, I highly encourage you to check it out because it's very related to this. But making sure that if they are using AI writing, they're attributing the source. And, like we would with anything else, MLA, citation, and reviewing the content, like we just talked about, analyzing the AI output, and then combining that content with original thought. And I use that word original thought really loosely, but making sure that it starts with your ideas and it ends with your beliefs. I make sure that, we talked about giving credit where it's due. I actually did create in the book MLA citation and APA citation guides. I haven't made them one page, so they're like 3 pages. So I need to work on just compiling them into one pagers. If you subscribe to my newsletter, I'll give you the last link. I'm going to try to get that in the next newsletter, if not the one after that. And I will obviously put it out on X if you follow me at Alana Winnick. But I think it's really important. A fun fact that I learned throughout the process of this is, we should really cite our sources. That's really important. But AI generated images, technically in MLA format, there is no citation for MLA citation for images, but in APA there is. So technically, I don't know, Tim, if you're on here, how you feel about this, you have to cite AI generated images in APA, but in MLA, you don't have to, which I found really fascinating. And so here's a group out of New York City. I don't know if they're on here, but if any of you are on here, I know we were emailing and you want to hop in because, that's the name of the platform, no pun intended, hop in and tell us a bit about it. I put a summary of this article, but in computer science classes in New York City, they are actually doing everything that I just talked about with their students in their classes. So there is this great New York Times article. I actually use AI to summarize it so I can click on it. If you're in here, please hop on because I would love to have you share your work. But if you're not, don't worry. I did a summary. I tried to use an AI character to read this out loud. So I took the New York Times article, I used an AI to summarize the article, and then I was going to put it through an AI avatar and have it speak to you, except all of them were blocked here at school, and I tried to get an unblock before this presentation. It was a whole conundrum. But I put the summary for you here, and I highlighted the top things. So this was the first time in Marissa's teaching career that she didn't craft the lesson plan herself, and she used AI to generate a lesson based on teaching and wearable technologies. And she had her students evaluate the effectiveness of the AI generated lesson, which was ChatGPT. And again, we're in New York, it's not compliant, so she couldn't have them go on ChatGPT and do it herself. Fun fact, Bing Enterprise, your district needs to enable it in the admin console, but Bing, the new Bing, they have a chat for faculty and staff only. It's compliant and they're keeping our data private, not for students. So asterisk, not for students, but for staff. I enabled it here. And I shared it in my last episode of the generative age, but in the show notes, I think that I actually didn't post that one yet. It was John Spencer. I need to post that. I'm almost done editing it. And it was in my last newsletter as well. But she did not have them log on because we're in New York, not compliant, but she did generate the output and she had them analyze the output. And many schools are debating the misuse of these tools for cheating, but she actually fostered it for critical thinking, and she's a computer science teacher. And thank you, Sean Arnold, for connecting me with these teachers. So I haven't talked to them yet. I'm really excited to hop on and talk to them. You may or may not hear them featured on an episode of my podcast, just saying. We haven't confirmed or denied that, but I need to have initial conversations with them. But based on this article, I love what they're doing. So they are training, New York City public schools are training their educators to teach students about AI bias and potential risks. So we talked a little bit about AI bias and the risks, and the educators there, the computer science educators, are doing a fantastic job of actually implementing this with their students. And in one class, they discussed the bias of facial recognition systems, focusing on the difficulty of recognizing the darker skin tones of faces. So through videos, the students learned some renowned Black women like Oprah Winfrey, Michelle Obama, and Serena Williams. They were misgendered by the facial and AI facial analysis system. So that is a bias, right? And the students learned and explored this on their own through videos. And then she also gave them detailed lesson plans for this exact lesson. And the students had to follow the lesson that the AI generated that she would have done in a typical class, and they had to analyze it for effectiveness. So she she had ChatGPT create lesson plans. She handed them out to groups of students. They went through the lessons and they decided if the lessons were effective or if they were not effective compared to her normal teaching strategies. And what I found really interesting was her students said that the AI generated content was dull and unengaging, noting it was too straightforward and sounded more like product marketing than what their teacher usually produces. And at the end of the class, when asked if the teacher should use ChatGPT, the unanimous response was no. So I thought that was really interesting. Next month, actually, on my podcast is Vicki Davis, and we're going to focus a lot about human, like the human element of AI. And she also is a computer science teacher. So definitely invite you to check that out. We do record the live audience, so you can join us live. You can register on nicegate.org. It's powered by Nicegate, and you can join live, engage in back channel discussions, ask Vicki Davis questions. Don't worry, your voice is not like on the podcast, but I do use your questions to guide the conversation. And if you can't join live, it's at the end of October. I will post it around the beginning of November. But she does teach just like most of you do. And we are talking about that human balance, because like we see from this article and from our teachers in New York City and from what Vicki Davis is going to share, it's a great place to start, but it's really never going to replace that human. And John Spencer on my podcast, which is not, I did not post it yet. He gave this analogy that I really loved, and he loves eating. So he loves cookies. And he said, an Oreo is really great. I really love Oreos. I think they're delicious, but nothing beats a homemade chocolate chip cookie. And it's that human element of the human baking the homemade chocolate chip cookie. And I think that was a really great analogy of adding that human touch. So these are all things that you can explore with your own students in your own computer science classes, and putting them in the driver's seat and having them really answer these very challenging and difficult questions. So now here are the questions that I want to pose to you. So let's get you active in the chat. So let's start with scenario 1. A student uses AI to generate a full essay and only, that was sort of from the, let's skip that one. 2, a student could, these are the exact same ones. Let's do 3. I love this one. 3 is my thing. A student uses dictation to compose passages and then runs them through AI to refine the content, removing filler words, summarizing their ideas, and expanding on different ideas. So use dictation to compose a passage. They ran it through AI to refine the content. They removed their filler words, summarized their ideas, and expanded on different ideas. Do you think that's cheating? Yes or no? Put it in the chat. Is that cheating? No. Would you do this in your own work? Okay. And is this relevant to the student's future? Do you think this is a skill they might need to be successful in the future? What do you think? Fun fact, I wrote most of my book like this, literally. I really did. I drive to work every day from New York City to Westchester. I have a lot of ideas when I'm driving, but obviously it's not safe to text and drive. So I pulled out my Google Doc and I narrated a lot of it, but I say and I have a lot of filler words. So I got my thoughts out. I ran them through AI, I removed the filler words, and then I would ask the AI to give me more ideas, to summarize my ideas if it was a little bit run on. And I use it really as a thought partner. So this number 3 was actually taken from how I wrote the book. And I had a really interesting conversation. I was in Miami this past weekend, and I was having dinner with Carl Hooker and Ken Shelton. And Ken Shelton said that he does not do work when he's flying on the plane. He listens to audiobooks. And he listens to a lot of audiobooks every week, but he usually can get through a book a week or maybe more than that. And he only reads with audiobooks. So that's not a traditional sense of reading, right? He's not actually reading words. And then if I did my writing like this, and I asked John Spencer too how he used AI in writing his book, and he said something about how he would interview people and he would take the transcripts and run it through AI. So it's sort of that dictation too, and summarizing interviews. And then, you always go back and edit it too. And I'm like, a question I had put in the book was, and I posed it to both of them, and it was not intentional, but what do you think in 10 years would define an educated person? If I wrote most of my book by dictation and Ken Shelton doesn't really read, he listens to audiobooks. It's not the traditional sense of reading and writing, but what is reading? Is reading processing and synthesizing ideas? Does it mean you need to do the traditional sense of the way reading is? Or what about Braille? Is that traditional writing? Like, I'm not asking you that, if you want to answer. Do you think maybe reading and writing in the traditional sense, do you think someone could still be considered educated and not read and write in the traditional sense? What do you think? Would they still be considered educated? Maybe they're dyslexic or dysgraphic. Yeah, so AI is really helping us redefine what education really looks like. So let's move on to number 4. A student uses AI to input their original thoughts, generate a rough draft of their assignment, reads through the content, heavily revise. Let's not even say heavily. Let's just say they revise it, and they restructure the draft and submit the final version. Is that cheating? What do you think? Is that cheating? Number 4. But we're going to get rid of the word heavily. Is it cheating? No one's typing in the chat. Are you stumped? You don't know what to write? It's not cheating. No. Okay. Would you do this in your own work? I'm going to get some different scenarios for you. If they acknowledge their use of AI at the conclusion of the work, so then you wouldn't think it's AI as long as they cited it. That's what Lindsay said. Let me try to find more scenarios. So we have about 15 minutes, or we could take this somewhere, wherever you want to go with it. I just want to leave you with this too. So I had created this passport to success. Oh, before I let you cheat, I'm going to pose this to you guys. Here's where you have to come in. What skills, and you're computer science teachers, right? So you know more about the future of a computer science world. What skills do you think are important to the student's future to be successful? So to be successful in the future, what skills do students need to be successful in their future? So put in the chat any skills that you think are important for them to be successful in their future workforce, really, or world. Like, we're adults in the world. So just take a minute and think about that. What skills do your students need to be successful in the real world? Before I give you my answers. What do you think? Solving real life problems, ability to think deeply, critically thinking, and problem solving. These are great. Any other ideas? Problem solving, advocating for themselves. Love that. Any other ideas you have for how they could be successful? Developing good questioning, good questions. Yeah, they need to know the questions to ask, get the best answer. Analyzing information, good communication skills. Love these answers. Anything else? Knowing how to find, evaluate, and use resources to help with yeah, these are all really, really important. I'm going to put my passport to success up there. So these are the ones that I came up with, and I thought these were just big buckets, and a lot of the things you said probably fit into a big bucket, but I tried to come up with these really big buckets. So emotional intelligence and empathy, right? Because especially we're going to talk about that with Vicki Davis, like that human element, right? The AI lacks that emotional intelligence and empathy, and I think that is one of the biggest places where AI lacks. And I think if they can have that skill, it's a very hard skill to develop, but if they could lack that skill, and if you use like the design thinking process, we always start with empathy, right? So I think that that's a really important skill for them to have. creativity and innovation. And like John Spencer, that's like his thing is creativity and innovation, and how you could use AI really to help you maybe critically think a bit deeper. But creativity is a big one. We really need a. John Spencer said he was so scared when he first saw AI that AI was going to take creativity away from humans, and he's convinced now why it won't. So if you want to hear his answers when I post it, go back and listen to that. A collaboration and teamwork, right? Like none of us work in isolation. We all collaborate with other people. It's a really important skill to have. Adaptation and resilience, right? So in computer science, if you're teaching coding, like your coding's gonna fail, but then you tweak it and adjust it, and having that resilience. And if you look at entrepreneurship, how many entrepreneurs failed before they succeeded? And just being resilient and being adaptable is a super important skill to have. I'm collaborating with my guidance counselor who teaches social emotional learning. We're going to present an ice skate together, and how the human brain actually is trained. We're talking about AI training. How the human brain is trained is actually through failure. When you fail and you mess up, you're like, oh, we're never going to do that again, right? Like if you touch a hot stove and you're like, burn myself, never going to touch a hot stove again. And we learn by failing. So with technology too, it's learning by failing and just being adaptable and resilient. And digital literacy, and I think media literacy, right? We need to question the output, question where everything's coming from. Those are really big skills. Critical thinking and problem solving. You guys nailed that one in the chat. Lifelong learning, right? Like we're adults right now. We're still learning. We're learning about this right now. We don't even know enough yet. We're still learning about this every single day. So just teaching students to be a lifelong learner, to keep learning and growing beyond just the four walls of your classroom and after they graduate. Ethics and responsible AI use, right? We talked a lot about ethics and using AI responsibly, and I hope that you instilled that with your students as well. I'm sure you've heard of the case with a lawyer who I think they just ran it through ChatGPT or an AI, and they submitted it to a judge, and the judge was like, really great cases. And then they looked them up and the cases didn't even exist. That's a hallucination. So AI hallucinates like we saw in that video. It just comes up. If it doesn't know the answer, it acts pretty confident. It comes up with things. So we need to really make sure our students know about AI ethics and responsible use and computational thinking. So if you're a computer science teacher, I'm sure you know all about computational thinking and how important that skill is, because students, if they have those skills, they transfer into other problem solving skills, and they might not be in the computer science field. Maybe many of your students are, but even if they're not, those are skills that they can bring with them to many other areas in the workforce. So like I said, the AI is something I'm investigating every day. I've had Tim Needles, who I think is on here right now, Carl Hooker, Donnie Piercy, AJ Giuliani, and I have topics for them like project-based learning, AI in the classroom, deep fakes and risk-taking. I just interviewed John Spencer on Monday. That episode's not up yet. Next month is Vicki Davis talking about artificial intelligence and human intelligence. Again, she's also a computer science teacher, and I've noticed the episode with the most listens was actually with Donnie Piercy, AI in the classroom. So I'm noticing that people really want to know what's going on in the classroom. So I'm trying to find more of those. So posing it all to you here. If you know any great guests, they don't have to be super education famous like many of these faces here. I want to know what's going on in the classroom because I know you guys want to know what's going on in the classroom. Like Sean Arnold connected me with that amazing team in New York City, and I shared their story with you. Like, what's going on in the classrooms that's innovative around AI? If you have any potential guests, reach out, let me know. And also Ken Shelton, he's going to be talking about, when I was with him this weekend, he has this idea for a super prompt. So he's going to be sharing his super prompt with you, so you don't have to go back and edit the results. He thinks he's nailed this super prompt, where if you put all this information in the beginning, you don't even need to tweak the output later because it's going to give you exactly what you want. Obviously, analyze the output, but he's saying you don't need to go back and retrain the chatbot to get what you're looking for. And he also talks a bit about AI bias and discrimination, which we talked about here as well. Matt Miller's confirmed as well, looking at his AI shades of gray, as I called them. So check that episode out. I have many, many more, but those are the ones that are scheduled. So for more information on that, if you just go to generativage.com, you can watch it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. There's a QR code there if you want to get directed to that. Go back and watch any of the other ones. Like I said, through NiceGate, you could join live, engage in back channel discussion, kind of like we did here, engage with like-minded individuals. Also in NiceGate, if you go to nicegate.org, we just haven't really officially announced this, but we have communities. So if you create it's a free membership. So if you're not a member of NiceGate, highly encourage you joining. That will allow you to join these for free, but also there's a generative age community, and you can engage with people all around generative AI, ask questions, share resources, share what you're doing in your classroom. So it's a whole community built for you around AI use. So I highly encourage you to join that as well. And then I just want to say thank you for joining me here today. Like I said, a lot of this content was really taken straight from the book. So for deeper dive, highly recommend that. I tried to put a lot of like quizzes and questions. I put a lot of, it's wrong camera, a lot of engaging quizzes and questions for you in the book. And I really had initially designed this for like school leaders, and then I went back and rewrote it for teachers and computer science teachers. But I have a lot of questions. So I do have these like difficult questions, and they're for you to sit with your teams of teachers or like in your departments and go through these really challenging questions together. So it's not just an independent book. It's something that you can read as groups and go through all the scenarios together. I think it's really a healthy conversation for you to have with your colleagues, and make sure you all are on the same page about it. So there's resources in there as well. And like I told you with the podcast, that's where with a book, it's like kind of, okay, it's published and it's set in stone. And I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do next? So every month I have these thought leaders on the podcast, and I really dig a bit deeper. And then I started a newsletter. My last newsletter, my first one, was about setting the AI stage and how to really set those foundational expectations with your students, whether you're a leader with your teachers or whether you're a teacher with your students. So if you go to alanawinnick.com, click on newsletter, you can read my last newsletter, and you could also subscribe to receive future newsletters. Connect with me on any social media at Alana Winnick. And I want to hear what you're doing. Like, I'm not just here to share with you. I want to like highlight your work, right? This is not the Alana show. This is not, I call it the generative age. I'm powered with NiceGate. We're all in New York. NiceGate is the New York State Association for Computers and Technology in Education. You should all be members of that. It's free. Check out the annual conference. And we want to highlight your work. And you are computer science teachers. You're probably using AI more than most other educators. So what are you doing? Like, please reach out, share your stories with me. I'd love to highlight your work. It could be anonymous if you don't want your name attached to it, or I can share your work as well. And I'm happy to do that, especially for everyone in my home state. So we have 1 minute. Wow, I've talked a lot. Any questions? Does anyone have any questions for me? Anyone have any questions? I'm happy to answer them. No questions. All right, well, that's all I have for you. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, I'll catch you in another session. You're welcome, everyone. Hopefully I'll join your sessions and learn from you. And please, please, please share what you're doing. Like, I want to highlight you. So reach out and share.